The PFC had a field trip on September 23rd to view a potential area for project number 4. And during the field trip, the coalition was asked to help provide some feedback to the Forest Service in order to reduce the total project area size from 80,000 acres to approximately 50,000 acres. Remember that this is the general boundary of the area that we visited on the 23rd. We had 3 tour stops just below Smith Mountain, a stop at a stream crossing where we saw a natural substrate culvert, and then a stop at a saddle overlooking a fuel project near Cuprum. The 3 watersheds starting from the top are Indian Creek, and the middle one, Bear Creek, and the one furthest to the east is Lick Creek. We didn't have the chance to go through Lick Creek, and this was one of the areas that is important to restoration, and particularly for northern Idaho ground squirrel. In our discussions in August, one of the justifications for visiting this area rather than the areas south and east of Middle Fork Weiser River was the existing populations of northern Idaho ground squirrel and the potential to contribute to the recovery plan. So how do we reduce it? One simple method would be to drop off a watershed. In this case, I've dropped off Lick Creek and retained Indian Creek and Bear Creek. Now there is a disadvantage here that we would lose Lick Creek and the Lick Creek corridor, which was one of the items of interest to the coalition for picking this area to begin with. So an alternative would be to drop Indian Creek and retain Bear and Lick Creek. Now there is a disadvantage here also because some of the WUI fuel treatment options in Indian Creek would disappear. So just to consider an option number 3, what if we were to combine Lick Creek with, say, the upper drainage of Bear Creek and the upper drainage of Indian Creek? Both of those areas, the 2 upper drainages for those 2 6-level watersheds, are ACS priorities due to the presence of bull trout. In Lost Creek, Boulder Creek, we learned that there are 3 important components in terms of defining desired condition: the forest plan, the management area direction, and the management prescription categories. The desired condition is related to the 5 PFC goals of watershed health, wildfire, wildlife, access and recreation, and economics. So let's just visit each one of these topics in a very qualitative way with respect to the option 3 project boundary delineation. For watershed health, Lee presented this map during our field tour of the 3 watersheds. The 6th-level watersheds, Bear Creek, has a condition class 3, or in other words, it's impaired. The other 2 watersheds are functioning at risk. The map also displays roads, given the miles of roads. I think Lee made the comment that there are plenty of opportunities to improve watershed condition overall, and I think that would still remain to be true if we carved off just the upper drainages of Indian Creek and Bear Creek. In terms of wildfire, we would retain the upper drainage of Indian Creek, and here's a photo from our field tour. We were looking slightly to the north and east. I believe this is north of the Cuprum project, and the comment that was made at this tour stop was that there are fuel treatments that could be implemented extending the Cuprum project to this, either to the south or to the north. In this case, we are looking to the north and to the east. Another point that's important to remember is that when the Forest Service modified the CFLRP work plan, there were acres that shifted into the wildland urban interface for for the metrics for the acres that would be treated for fuels, and the non-WUI acres were reduced. So this approach of retaining the upper drainage of Indian Creek would help to achieve that objective and retain the acres that could be treated to reduce fuels in the wildland-urban interface. Next, take wildlife opportunities. Russ presented this map. The areas highlighted in red are known colonies of northern Idaho ground squirrel. There are several mapped in Lick Creek and some on the ridge between Lick Creek and Bear Creek, and then other colonies within Bear Creek itself. Using this option 3 of retaining the upper drainages and then all of Lick Creek, there still would be opportunities to have the project contribute to the recovery plan for northern Idaho ground squirrel, even though the southern part of Bear Creek would be dropped out. In terms of aquatic habitat restoration opportunities, in this map we have the ACS priorities of the upper drainages cross-hatched on the map. Due to the presence of bull trout, the streams in both of these watersheds are designated critical habitat, and so I think there would be treatments that would improve or restore the function of aquatic habitat. And for example, potential treatments that we briefly talked about at tour stop number 2 is realigning roads that are in the riparian conservation area, and I think that would be those would be candidate treatments for both the upper drainage of Indian Creek watershed as well as Bear Creek. And let's not forget access and recreation. We stopped just below Smith Mountain and saw the trailhead for trail number 227 into Upper Indian Creek. Near that location, in this what we understand is a pretty extensive trail system within this area, is trail number 226. And in our meeting in August, I believe Jane mentioned that this is a restoration candidate. Also in Bear Creek is the Huckleberry Campground and potential improvements for that campground. It is the only improved campground within the potential project area that we reviewed. And just northeast of the Huckleberry Campground is the Bear Trailhead, and 3 improvements that were identified for that trailhead were installing hitching rails, constructing a new restroom, and making improvements to a trail bridge. The 5th goal, restoration economics, I think with a reduction of acres from 80,000 to 50,000 acres, Paul's comment about the potential commercial treatment acres would drop. I'm just making a very rough estimate in round numbers of 4,000 acres in this option 3 of the upper drainages of the 2 watersheds plus all of Lick Creek. Now let's say that we could commercially harvest on average 5 MBF per acre off those 4,000 acres and use a stumpage value of $100 per thousand. Then stumpage receipts would be roughly $2 million. And in the CFLRP proposal from the Payette, we've discussed before on other projects that the stumpage match was 22%. I'm just rounding that to 20% in this slide. So what does that mean for a total scale of a project? If we take $2 million and divide by 20% for the required match from stumpage receipts, we have a $10 million project. That's quite a bit different amount of activity compared to what was proposed in Lost Creek, Boulder Creek. So when if we were to proceed with this option 3 in a 50,000 acre project, roughly 50,000, I think it's around 48,500 acres. Our committees would need to think about priorities and ideas for where would $9 million be invested, and why 9 million? Well, it's going to cost some money to set up the sales for the commercial harvest, and also monitoring will take a portion of the dollars. So I'm reducing the 10 million from the previous slide to 9 million, and that would be allocated among vegetation treatments, including prescribed fire, pre-commercial thinning, and possibly updating the inventory of invasive plant species. That's an additional topic that was discussed on the tour. And then for road and recreation infrastructure, an important one is road alignment, particularly reducing road miles in RCAs, road and trail maintenance, road and trail improvements. Both of those, as in other projects, would be pricey items. And then road decommissioning, including road closures as well as road obliterations. We stopped at one stream crossing. I think what we've heard from Jason and Lee in past discussions is that there are not very many opportunities for additional stream crossings, so that probably would be less of a restoration action than it has been in either Lost Creek, Boulder Creek, or in Mill Creek, Council Mountain. So in summary, the Forest Service has asked the PFC to provide feedback regarding the project boundary, reducing it from 80,000 to 50,000 acres. In this slide presentation, I've outlined three options, and the purpose with option 3 is really to initiate discussion, not to finalize a recommendation. Both the PFC members and the Forest Service ID teams are encouraged to use the forum for comments and feedback and expressing any other ideas on modifying the project boundary. And then let's be prepared to discuss this at the October PFC meeting and finalize a recommendation to the Forest Service regarding the boundary for project number 4.